You know, tooth structure is amazing. When you consider that you've got pulpal tissues, which for a vital tooth are principally red, and then you think about dentin, which is so wonderfully tough, but so different in its color characteristics than enamel. Dentin is usually some varying shades of red and brown tints, yellow tints, gray-green tints, and the type of coloration that can be described reasonably well with an alphanumeric form. And most all of us grew up with the Vita shades, and these alphanumeric shades can quite nicely describe dentins. And dentins, as we have learned, most fall in this reddish-brown arena, the A type of dentins. The yellows would be the B types, the gray-greens the C types, and with an ascending scale as per decreasing value and or increasing chroma. Alphanumeric works quite well. In hindsight, it's amazing that we survived these alphanumeric shades for as many years as we did, if in fact we're trying to replace enamel as well as dentin. Because enamel is extremely different than dentin. It's more like glass. It's wonderfully hard, but like glass, it's much more translucent. Howbeit, there's usually two types of enamel that wrap the dentin core. We have what we call a body enamel, which is usually a little more opacious than, say, a translucent enamel, which is most usually found just on the incisal edge of anterior teeth. And as translucency implies, many times you can virtually look through it. Well, the challenge when Vit-l-escence came out, and Vit-l-escence truly, the first aesthetic composite of multiple shades, standalone dentin shades, standalone enamel shades, a complete palette of the making of a Michelangelo, if you will. How can we describe these varying enamel shades that are not just varying values, not just varying hues and chromas, but varying levels of translucency and opacity? How can we create a mental picture in the mind of a dentist so that they can develop a virtual immediate relationship over time with an enamel shade they're looking at and a mental impression in their mind? To do this, we felt the best thing, the best source we could call on was nature. Now, as we call on nature, we envision various natural phenomena which have varying levels of opacities and translucencies and the like. We wish to call on forms of nature that were pleasant, not smog, for example, for a smoky gray. We wanted positive, uplifting terms, if you will. So you can envision that if we were going to describe, for example, the most translucent shade, what would be more translucent from nature than ice? So a trans-ice, a translucent incisal edge of ice, the ultimate, most translucent there is. Now, if we were starting to ascend an opacity scale, the next level that our brains came up with is mist, kind of austere, almost romantic, but mist, mostly translucent, but a speckling of little opaque stars, if you will, in it, and hence transmist, the next level of opacity for a translucent edge. Now, certainly there's going to be varying hues, and so you could have a trans gray, and you could have a trans orange, and you could have a trans blue, and all of these translucent combinations with various hues and chromas comes to mind. But now let's think about how we would describe the body enamel, that enamel that's not the translucent edge. That body enamel, as a general rule, it's a little more opacious, albeit still translucent. Well, when we looked at nature for something that would kind of connect to it, pearl came to mind. And so we decided for these body enamels, we'll call those the pearl enamels. For these translucent ones, the translucent ones, with the exception of, say, an opaque snow, which is just going to be totally opacious nonetheless. So as we thought about varying grades and keeping in mind this gradation of opacities, translucencies, to move to something that would be more opacious than a mist and describe a more opacious enamel in a body form, not an incisal edge form, we came up with a moderately translucent, moderately opaque term by putting pearl and frost together. We've all seen the frost out on the lawn, out on the grass, and it's semi-opaque, semi-translucent. And it certainly sounds more pleasing than a pearl fog, too close to smog, if you will. So that was our next gradation. Now, certainly to go to a higher level of opacity than a frost, one does become quite opacious. And that's why snow was used as the next level, as collecting from nature analogous substances to describe something much more opaque than frost, which is more opaque than mist, which is more opaque than ice, if you will. And as we move beyond a mist, we're now opacious enough that we're a body enamel, and hence we're falling in that pearl range. And yes, there could be a pearl shade that was like a frost, but it had a smoky color to it. And that could be, like, for example, a pearl neutral, for example, if it was just slightly such. But by looking at the different combinations of trances and pearls, and with the type of descriptive that they are modifying, it hopefully enables the clinician to create a mental picture that, this pearl frost is going to be more white, more opacious than this trans mist, and in a way that once they understand it, that their brain can connect to, tie to nature, if you will, and difficult to impossible to describe in an alphanumeric way as the dentin shades are. So that, in a nutshell, is the story behind the nomenclature, the identification of the various shades, quote unquote, of the Vit-l-escence series.